Tsukamoto Kisei, the biggest Sentai maniac there is, has taken Sentais of the past hostage and under his control when it's up to a group of 5 to free them. No, this isn't the plot point of Smash Bros. World of Light, it's the opener to this year's newest Sentai, number 1 Sentai, GoZyuger. Only 2 seasons removed from the last anniversary, we are here yet again to celebrate even more anniversaries. This time, it's the Big 5-0. Even if the seasons don't add up. And you can kind of blame the police on that one. But yes, what appears to be a very interesting take on the anniversary trope that has plagued Toei's superhero time is back at the forefront. And although initial rumors suggested that this would be a family team like previous seasons 10 and 20 years before this one, this appears to be anything but. Since looking at the character bios, almost everyone seems to be devoid of family. Going back to some older Sentai story beats, Tegasword, the series mecha is a being on his own. A godlike being that during the events of the universe war of the past had his power split into rings which are attracted to human wishes. Thus, he organizes a ring battle, forming a contract with chosen humans to decide who is number 1.
He was number 1!
Haruhono is our red of this year. Living the stray lifestyle, his gimmick is similar to Mira from Boom Boomger, where we should see him working a different part-time job just about each episode. Bring on the Jeffrey Giraffe cameo! Due to his past, he is a man without wishes, but at the base of things, he's a good guy, even if he is a little brash. Rikuo Hyakuya is the glittery blue and discount Yanma of the season, an idol for all, but after an incident, gets booted from his agency. However, being the people person that he is can be very manipulating. Bakugami Ryugi, the oldie for this one, is actually yellow. Like we had Dabowski in King-Ohger who was black, and Kijino in Dom Brothers who was pink, and if we go back to Kyoruger where we had Nosan being blue, we are really going all over the color wheel when we're throwing in these 30-year-old cast members. Essentially a monk follower of Tegasword, wishing nothing but the godlike mecha's happiness. As a child, he didn't care much for his family, and abandoned them the second he found out about Mecha God. Sounds like my kind of guy if I'm to be real, even if I'm not a real big fan of his fit. Kinjiro Takihara is the green schoolboy, who is trying to change his ways, being a serious loner type who actually wants to be a party boy. And finally, Sumino Ichikawa, who is our first mainstay female black Sentai. And I say mainstay because technically King-Ohger beat them to the punch. Originally wanting to be a cop, but after something happened in the past, she instead went down the path of being a high-class detective. One thing that seems to be a common theme when looking at the character bios is that all of the cast is pretty much estranged from their family. And certain events in the past seem to have caused them from walking a specific path and forcing them into being outcasts. Which kind of makes for an interesting backstory to lead us into the mythos of this world. Or at least, what that shared event could have been, if it is even a shared event, to cause them to walk down a different path than they were originally intended. However, that's not the entire cast, because they are joined by Saori Ijima, who runs the cafe Half Century. That will end up being the reoccurring hangout spot, and she seems to be a mother on her own and has kids. But she's also apparently handing the reins to Ryugi, the yellow Sentai, after a bit. At least that's what we get from these character notes. The villains are the Buraidan, aka the villain gang. Original. That's original, alright. But that also means that Budai from Zuru Ranger's name was literally villain, but hey, that was then, this is now. So let's look at the executives. First up, we have Fire Candle. Okay. He's got beef with Red, but does care for his allies. And can I just note that during the presser, the dude just exudes enthusiasm. Bro was even hyping up Ginga Man that was like, he was almost in it.
獣たちがいきなりボーンピーンダダダンつって始まるんですよ。戦士、それは銀河の平和を守るために戦う神秘の動物たちのことである。デレデレデレデレ銀河マン。
Next up will likely be my Sononi of the season with Bouquet, who is humble, polite, and understands your feelings. You sure these guys are villains? Who's next? Kuon, the president of an AI company, and he apparently holds the key to the story. And finally, Mr. Shining Knife and Mrs. Sweet Cake. Yes, totally not a Kyoryuger villain. These two loved each other so much that they became one. But when they really loving on each other, they be expanding. Really, this is an interesting choice here, because the bad guys just don't seem like bad guys. The monsters of the week will vary, from monsters, super robots, and other red Sentai. Essentially, from the sound of things, these number one showdowns with enemies are in competition of saving people and collecting rings. But the Sentai will also be in rivalry with each other, which to me seems like some G Gundam vibes, and I'm totally feeling it. This implies that the villain group might be less villains and more rivals, just looking to use the rings for their own reasonings, but not exactly for anything nefarious. However, the information regarding Kyon does make me wonder if the event of the show might be either an AI simulated reality, or if the events are directly going towards the tech that he's developing. The dynamic of these, paired with an unlikely team, does give me semblance of another writing style, which brings me to the obvious point here, and that is that the head writer is Akiko Inoue. That's right, Toshiki Inoue's daughter and next-gen Nepo baby is here to finally prove her chops and show off on a show of her own. Now, for those of you unfamiliar with her work, she did work on the fun episodes of Gotchard that most people were probably laughing at, like they were definitely the more goofy-esque episodes, but also provided some tonal whiplash depending on the narrative that preceded the events. So sometimes the episodes would hit, sometimes they would miss. It really just depends on the flow that show was going with. But otherwise, standalone, probably enjoyable episodes. I know the one with the sweet meat, hilarious. But she also ended up working on Kamen Rider Shinobi. So anything dealing with the Shinobi stuff was her doing. And that also ended up having very comedic story beats in itself. So I'm expecting nonsense. But look, here she is, finally getting her own show, and not soon after her father made the last anniversary show. The director is Ryuta Tazaki, who's worked on multiple entries in Sentai up through Danbros, while the composer is Kan Sawada, who mostly did Doraemon's OST, with the only notable thing Toku related being the High School Heroes. As of right now, the biggest hesitation that I have is whether or not this will end up being a Red-centric story, or at least make him the focus of a lot more than the rest of the cast would be, especially considering that Fire Candle and Q-Ons have some sort of relationship with him according to their character bios. Now, taking a sideline from that, we do get some teases of the intro, which is Winner GoZyuger by... Am I reading this right? Wieners! Yes, Wieners. It seems very uppity, like Chow Bop-ish, but, you know, it's not really up my alley from what I've heard of it thus far. We'll have to see once the actual song releases, but right now I'm not really feeling it, Mr. Krabs. However, I do feel the vibe of what I heard from the ending song, which is Bitty Bitty Believing by Kaneko Miyu, and apparently this is her first hit track. Like, she just now made it out as a debut artist this month, so hey, good on you. Now look, I'll be the first to admit that the anniversary aspect has kind of waned a bit in terms of my hype meter, because every year just feels like an anniversary year with Toei shows. This being the big 5-0 at least gives it a bit more merit than a season that just happens to be a 5s or one of those off 10s. But I will say that the implementation of the suits for the anniversary as an aspect is a nice touch, showing that the team, when they do transform, don't fully change their outward appearance, as seen in the glimpse of it in the trailer. However, the chest piece, from the looks of things, is still plain. And I needed to do something, or it's just as plain as that robot toy. Look, Lupin Red wouldn't want that if he knew how in action it posed. But speaking of mecha, with this presser, they announced side content, Super Sentai Universe Wars, which will be a mecha on mecha CG fest, which will be up on their probably region-locked YouTube channel, among others that I'm not so interested in. But you put up some mecha fighting? I might be interested depending on how good that CG is. All I can say is that this is probably the most optimism I've had going into a show. I like the suits, I like the production staff involved, the character styles bring that continual oddities amongst the team that we really have been having with the previous 4 entries. And although I'm not a big fan of the toy, that mecha design of the show is indeed good. The villains also seem to exude personality. And the biggest thing that I'm not vibing with is just a little bit of the intro that I heard. But 2025 could end up being one of the best superhero time lineups that we've had in years, with Kamen Rider Gavu as a companion show to this, being a heavy hitter on its own. So this may be a shocker to a lot of my longtime viewers, as I've been going into almost every single show since starting up this channel with major reservations, but this time, I can definitely say,
Are you feeling it?
I'm feeling it. Now, if you are looking to score yourself some GoZyuger merch, don't forget to use my Tokullectibles link down in the description. And if you're new here, you can find me on Twitch and Discord. Links are also in the description. But yes, I'll dive deeper into things with my panels and my thoughts, as well as yours, on Friday's Tokutonic livestream. But what are your first impressions based off what we've seen thus far? Also, if you missed the presser, go to my Twitch channel, like the VOD's up right now. But otherwise, like I said, everything seems very interesting for this show. I'm pretty much going into this at about a 85% hype meter, which is honestly the highest amount of hype I've had going into a show in years. So with that being said, I will catch you all on the next one, and we'll see how GoZyuger goes from here. Bye.